Hi, I'm Deb Heatherly, and today I'd like to show you how to make half rectangles quickly, easily, and accurately with the Creative Grids Half Rectangle Trim Tool. With this tool, you can make 7 sizes of right slanting half rectangles or left slanting half rectangles. The units are made 2 at a time and trimmed to perfection with the half rectangle trim tool in the final step. A cutting chart right on the tool shows you just what you need to cut to make 2 at a time half rectangles. But before I show you how that works, let's talk about the differences in half rectangles and half square triangles. If I wanted to make a half square triangle, I'd simply cut 2 matching squares, draw a diagonal line, and sew a 1/4 inch from the line on either side. When I cut on the line, my yield would be 2 half square triangles. The seam would go corner to corner, and when I sew it into my quilt, because this is a 45-degree angle, even after taking a 1/4 inch seam all around, my seam would still go corner to corner. Also, with half square triangles, if I want right slanting half square triangles or left slanting half square triangles, I can simply rotate my units. Not so with half rectangles. If I tried to make half rectangles the same way we make half square triangles, by drawing a diagonal line and sewing a 1/4 inch on either side, when I cut on that line, here's what I end up with. Not quite a half rectangle. Also, if I make a half rectangle and I trim it so that the seam line goes corner to corner, once I sew it into my quilt, that seam line will no longer be corner to corner. It will look a little wonky. That's because half rectangles are not a 45-degree angle, and they need an 1/8 inch seam indent so that when they're sewn into your quilt, they'll then be right. We'll talk about that more as we go along. Let's see how we're going to make these. Today I'm going to demonstrate 2 by 4 inch finished half rectangles, and the chart on the tool tells me that I need to cut a pair of 3 by 6. If I want to make right slanting half rectangles, I'm going to cut from the top right to the bottom left. To make 2 half rectangles. If I want to make left slanting half rectangles, I need to cut from the top left to the opposite corner to make 2 left slanting half rectangles. Let's use the right slants first. I like to tell my students to think of this as a boot. This is the heel of the boot, the top, and the toe. We never want to cut off the heel, but we are going to add smart corners to the top and to the toe. First, we're going to use A on the trim tool, aligning the edges and looking at the graphic so that we cut off the top tip, adding our first smart corner. Then rotate the fabric and rotate the tool, aligning B and the 2 lines beside B to cut off the toe. Once we have our smart corners, construction is easy. You'll simply align the smart corners and sew a 1/4 inch down the edge. If I'm working with my left slant half rectangles, I need to add the same smart corners, but I'm going to turn my fabric right side down. Now A will align just like it did with our other set. Rotate the fabric and rotate the tool, cutting off the toe of our boot with the trim tool. Now let's look at trimming. If I'm trimming a right slanted half rectangle, I'll use this side of the tool, which says right slant trimming. I'll align the diagonal seam and the diagonal line on the tool, sliding it and making sure that I'm going to have fabric to trim on all 4 sides. Notice that you'll always trim more on the top and the bottom than the two sides, and that's because of the angle of a half rectangle. Once I trim the first two sides, I'll rotate the unit, and again align the diagonal line. Now the first two sides that I trimmed will sit right on the dashed line that says 2 by 4. Because remember, we're making 2 by 4 finished units. Notice that 1/8 of an inch indent required on a half rectangle is built into the tool. If I'm trimming left slanted half rectangles, I'll trim them horizontally, and I'll use the side that says left slant trimming. Once again, I'll align the diagonal line with the seam line, slide it so that I see that I'm going to have fabric to cut on all 4 sides, and trim. Rotate the unit, align the diagonal line, and this time, again, the 2 sides that I just trimmed will sit right on the dash line that says 2 by 4. So why is that 1/8 of an inch important? Once my half rectangles have the 1/8 inch indent, unlike before when they were trimmed so that the seam went corner to corner, now, once the 1/4 inch seam allowance is taken and you sew it into your quilt, it will look exactly like you want it to, with the seam line corner to corner. Look for this tool at your local quilt shop and send me pictures of what you make. Until next time, happy stitching!